Hello, I'm Annalouise, and this week's video is called What's Bubbling? In my experience, so many people have something inside themselves that they've wanted to do or follow up, but they haven't taken the impulse for whatever reason. I don't know whether when you tune in there's anything for you, like possibly writing some poetry or painting pictures, or even taking some time in silence at a retreat, or maybe learning a new skill, learning a language, visiting certain places, perhaps finding a job which feels more aligned, making new connections, maybe even it's a longing for a new relationship. What's bubbling within you? What's been bubbling for a long time? I think we have a tendency as adults to put off those soul longings, those things that we really want to do, but we somehow don't ever make time for. I'll tell you a little story. I was sitting with my neighbour under a year ago, and he was saying, oh, maybe I would like to learn a musical instrument. And I was like, well, what would you like to learn? And he sort of mentioned a few instruments, but I could tell he wasn't really connecting. And then suddenly he looked at me and said, oh, well, for 20 years I've wanted to learn the didgeridoo. And I just went, 20 years? He was like, yeah, 20 years. And I said, you've never learned the didgeridoo? And he said, no. I said, right, come on, let's order a didgeridoo now. And sure enough, a year later, he's now playing his didgeridoo at my sound nights, and people are awed by this amazing instrument and the way he plays it, and it adds so much richness to the sound nights. And all because he followed that impulse. He was able to finally say yes to something that had been bubbling all this time. I had a similar experience for something that had been bubbling for 20 years of learning to snowboard, or starting to learn to snowboard, let's put it that way. I remember for years and years I'd wanted to learn to snowboard, but because it's not necessarily very practical, you have to go off, don't you, and do it and spend some time away, and it can be expensive, and so I hadn't prioritised it. And then 3 years ago, someone said to me, oh, I'm going on a ski holiday, do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, thank you, but this isn't the right moment. And he said, I'll teach you to snowboard. Like, oh, that's really tempting, but it's not. And then I meditated for about 2 weeks. I meditated, and when I meditated, it was like, go, go. Like, oh, okay. So at the very last minute, I contacted him and said, oh, can I join you after all? And it was one of my most miraculous trips. By saying yes to that bubble, yes to that impulse, it was astoundingly miraculous in so many different ways. Serendipity kept on showing up. Like the equipment, ski equipment, snowboarding equipment just showed up in like astounding ways. One day somebody actually even gifted us a pass for the slopes, and it was just incredible. And that's my experience these days, is when we say yes to what's bubbling at a soul level, then, or at a soul level, but like at that deep level of longing, magical ways are created in front of us, and all we have to do is take baby steps into our bubble. I really notice with my niece and nephew that they don't have any hesitation about following their bubbles. They don't have any time delay. So if 1 week they want to learn the piano from something at school, they want to learn the piano. And then a month later, if they suddenly come across the drums, they want to learn the drums. And then maybe rowing or another new sport or whatever it might be, some dance move. Their bubbles are really present for them in the moment, and they action in the moment. You know, there's no waiting. There's no like, oh, I'll do it in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, or I'll do it when I've done all my homework, or I'll do it when my life has changed in some way. It's like, no, the bubble is active. It wants to be seen, it wants to be heard, it wants to be experienced. And what's sweet is that they recognize that just because there's a bubble about one thing this week, it doesn't mean to say it has to mean anything, right? It doesn't have to mean more than just the experiencing of that, and then the flow might take them into something else. As adults, do you find that we can put too much pressure on ourselves for the things that we long for? Like, particularly, I think there can be a voice which says, well, I'm not going to be any good at that, or I'm too old, or how am I going to learn this new skill, or there are other things that are more important in my life. I would like us to reframe that the most important thing are our bubbles, the most important thing. And the rest will fall into place when we follow those. And it will fall into place with more serendipity and ease and grace, because we are living from the place of impulse and joy and curiosity and wonder. So how do we go about following our bubbles when we have all of this resistance, potentially, or this timeline? Well, first of all, of course, it's acknowledging what really has been bubbling, because sometimes we've been so denying what's bubbling that we don't even know what it is. Like when I asked my neighbour, initially he didn't say the didgeridoo. He said, oh, maybe this, maybe that. And then suddenly he went to didgeridoo, and you could just tell he was in alignment, but he didn't think about it straight away. So it's giving a bit of space to go, actually, yeah, I have a real longing to write poetry, or I have a real longing to grow some vegetables in the garden, but I don't know anything about gardening, or whatever it can be. Everyone's so individual. So recognizing our bubbles, the first step. And secondly, taking the minutest step. I think, again, as adults, we make it feel like such a big thing, but it's not a big thing. It really isn't a big thing. So that could be ringing someone, perhaps ringing a teacher and getting their advice. Or it could be having a look on the internet and just seeing what information's there. And maybe there are a few talks about our bubbles that might be interesting. Or it might be speaking to a friend that we know that has something to do with that. Or it doesn't matter, but the tiniest little action, and continuing with the tiniest little action for at least 10 days, every day, just a tiny little action, and then seeing where the momentum carries us. And it's possible that it might take us into something else that we realise we're actually longing for more, and that's totally perfect. That's totally perfect. And our attachment around the original thing will go, wow, I've been hanging on for that all this time, and it really wasn't about that anyway. And then there might be some loss and grief around not having pursued that before and feeling like we've wasted time, and and so that all those feelings can be natural and totally welcome. And as those feelings move, again, once again, gives us this opportunity to step into what's bubbling in this moment. So, have you got a sense of what's bubbling for you? If you have, please do post it below. That could be your first step. And you could also post like, oh, I'm going to make a call, or I'm going to speak to a friend, or whatever. If that feels too scary for you right now, which it might do, then you can just hold it in your heart and contemplate during the day what little action you could take. And having in mind my niece and nephew, who just embrace whatever's bubbling. and seeing whether we can step into that form of being with the world that we were like more when we were kids. And just going, what have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? Never mind. What have I got to lose? But what have I got to gain? Maybe joy, maybe engagement, maybe presence, maybe new connections, new friends, maybe mental stimulation, maybe physical stimulation. And wherever we're at in our body-mind system, we can take a little step to pursuing our interests and our bubbles. I hope you enjoyed this. Do forward it to anyone that you think might have something bubbling. Or even if it doesn't seem they do, my sense is that most people do. So it can be a good invitation. So do share it. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, you can, and you can press like if you have liked this video. And if you want to hear more about me and my work, you can go to www.resonating.love. Wishing you fun, ease, freedom, relaxation, spontaneity, curiosity, and a sense of feeling full from the inside by letting go and following our bubbles. Happy day to you. I'm just about to go off and follow my bubble by sharing sounds in the woods. Got a group of people together, all bringing instruments or their voices, and we'll see what unfolds. So much love.